Hi guys, today I'm going to be talking about my brother Bill and how he was scammed out of all of his life savings online dating. So I'll give you a little background on Bill. He grew up down the road from me, and his dad was a trucker, and his mom stayed at home, and she had passed away, and he was driving truck over the road, and the father was, and Phil was about 14 and he was still in school. I'm Monty Crew.
Hi, and I'm Argel Crew.
We're a married couple living in the Philippines.
We will be covering topics about everyday life here in the Philippines.
Tap that subscription button, tap that bell notification so you don't miss out on anything. And so we would go over, he would come over to our house all the time. We'd hang out together and stuff. Really nice kid. And but my mother started to notice that when his dad came back into town, that he was very abusive and very mean to Bill. And he lived in the house where his mother and father had lived, and his grandparents, for his father's side, lived across the street. And so he would live in the house where his dad was, and then he would go across the street and eat over there and go back home. But when his dad came into town, boy, it was on. So my mother finally went and talked to him and said, listen, if it was that much of an issue with you and Bill, well, why don't you just let him live with us, and we'll make sure he goes to school. They go to school together and everything, so it shouldn't be a big deal. So he came to live with us, and it all worked out good there, there. And so anyway, as he grew up, he married a girl out of high school, and her parents were very well off, and they owned a business in Ohio and two other different states, and they were very well off. So they bought him right before they got married. They bought a house for their wedding gift, which was a brick house in Huber Heights, and very beautiful neighborhood in Dayton, Ohio. So that went well, and Philip had was going to school for a diesel mechanic, and he went and finished that and was working part-time. After that, he got all that finished. Great mechanic. From even a kid, he could work on gasoline, diesel, anything. He was amazing. Tear engines down in the backyard and all this stuff. So anyway, so the parents for the girl decided, well, they would invest in starting a diesel shop for him to work on big rigs. Going back to their house now, that the parents had bought, they bought it right before they got married. That way, their daughter owned the house, and Bill couldn't take it away. So anyway, he finishes that. He gets into going good there, and he makes a ton of money in this shop. I mean, he's a great mechanic. He hired good people to work for him. And he was making a killing. So somebody, I guess, offered him some cocaine, and he tried it, and he ended up losing the business, losing the wife and kids, the house, everything basically out on the street. And she took her kids and moved out of state, and he didn't get to see them much. So he went to work for a place called Honda in Marysville, Ohio, and he worked there for a couple of years, and then it just wasn't keeping up with the money that he needed to pay child support and alimony. So he left there and started driving truck over the road, and he took his father's old route because his father had passed away, and which paid really good. He owned his dad left him the truck and his house, so he did really good with that, and got off cocaine and everything way before Honda in Marysville. Then so I'm just trying to give you a little background about the guy. So then he went and drove truck for the rest of his life. So he stayed single, had a few girlfriends here and there. And then finally one day he met this woman that was probably about 8 years older than him. And they hit it off, man. It was a great great relationship. She was wonderful, good Christian woman. He started going to church. I mean, his entire life flipped around 360. So he had sold his father's place, and he had done a bunch of repairs and remodeled it, and it was very nice at that point. So he made good money out of it. It was all paid for. The lady, she did the same thing. She owned a house in town. Her husband had passed away. And so they took both of their properties, sold them, and bought a farm out in the country. They built a nice house there, and they built a big pole barn. This woman's dream was to always, her whole life she had dreamed of owning an Arabian horse. Well, my mother raised Arabian horses all my life. So, that helped. And my brother and my mother went out and went searching for a horse. My mother knew the breeders, she knew the bloodlines, she knew everything to buy this woman the right horse at the right price and everything. So, therefore, they did that. My mother and Phil bought it for the lady. She was not she didn't know that it was coming. It was going to be a Christmas present for her. But they had always talked about it. And so Philip went out and spent $77,000 and bought this beautiful Arabian horse. And the horse was to be delivered on Christmas Eve. That way she would have this horse for Christmas. And that was their goal, and it was, he was so excited about this, he just couldn't hardly stand still, couldn't hardly keep his mouth shut. So, anyway, that came through. Everything was set in stone, going to be delivered on Christmas Eve. Then, the worst thing in the world could happen. She had a heart attack on Christmas Eve and died. And so the horse, the day before Christmas Eve, she died. So the horse was delivered, everything, but she passed away. So this totally broke my brother's heart. He went into some deep, dark depression. Really, really was bad. And my mom talked to him and said, probably be the best thing for you not to keep the horse. Maybe sell the horse and let somebody else, have it, and that could take care of it. And he told her, yes, she was right, because every time he looked at this horse, it just reminded him of her and just tore him back up, and he couldn't even think. So he sells the horse, gets more money than the $77,000 he paid for it. He puts that in the bank. This lady has had a very nice life insurance policy, and he was able to collect that along with part of her pension. So he's doing well. He's retired. He doesn't have to work anymore, and the house is paid for and the land and everything. So he decides, after a couple years, he decides, I should start dating again. Now, this is a guy that's 6'5", 100 pounds overweight, and worked hard all his life, and a good man now, and changed his life completely. And he decides he's going to start looking for a new girlfriend. So he goes out and he goes on the online dating, and he asked me about it. I told him, Phil, you have to be very, very careful, because there are so many scammers out there that you just never know what's going to happen. So just be careful and use your brain, and don't let your other thing run your life. Let this brain run it. And so anyway, some girl texted him on this online dating thing, and she's supposedly lived in Miami, and she was drop dead gorgeous. Later on, many years after, or not many years, but a couple of years after that, I found her picture. She was a runway model in Europe, and they had stolen her picture and used it to scam Bill. So, this guy's 100 pounds overweight. He's Yeah, he's listening to that. I'm not going to put him down, but because I'm not perfect either, my part. And so he thinks this beautiful model is in love with him and wants to be with him and all this stuff. And so he starts chatting with her, and they're talking every day. But she wouldn't go online. She wouldn't do the video chat. She wouldn't even voice talk to him. I told him later it's probably a guy. And of course he kept all this secret from me because he didn't want me to be in the middle of it. So she tells him some story about she needs to have a check cashed, and she's not able to cash it herself. Could she send him this check and him deposit it into his bank account? That should have been red bells and red flags everywhere, ding, 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 ding. But no, he puts it in the bank. A few days later, about a week later, I guess it was, he went to his bank to do something, or he went to use his card for the bank, his ATM card. It wouldn't work. So that's strange. So he calls him up. He can't get any information, so he goes to the bank the next day. They said, well, you withdrew all the money in your account. So somehow they'd gotten together and figured out a way to get something deposited in his account, therefore get his account information, and then clean him out. So the money from the horse, the money from her life insurance policy, all that, everything's gone. So, and other savings that he had had. So then he's ready to lose his mind, of course, and he starts searching into all this and gets the cops involved. And they all did what they could, but there was no way to retrieve the money. The girl was long gone. Nothing he could do about it. So all I can tell you, there is scams out there. You have to watch for them. You have to be smart about who you're talking to, what you're talking about. Don't give them much information about yourself, and just be, smart. That's all I can say. I mean, it breaks my heart. And he had to go back to work. Now he's working 10, 12 hours a day, driving local, just so he can survive, because all of his money's gone. All over thinking that this beautiful young 24-year-old runway model would be in love with you. And I can't say too much because Erica's 24 and she's gorgeous too, so it is what it is. But I know she wouldn't have my money, thank God, because I don't have any. But so when you guys are online and you're doing your little online dating, just keep in mind, always in the back of your mind, there's no way of you knowing, really being online, if a woman is in love with you or not, or if a man is in love with you or not, if you're a female. So just keep your head straight, and hopefully nothing like this ever happens to any of you. Anyway, you guys have a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are, and God bless.